All right, I think, yeah, I'm on speaker now. Can everybody, y'all hear me okay? All right, so first of all, where does the money come from? As most of you all know, the Greenbelt program is funded through what we call our transportation sales tax. These are two half-penny sales tax that were passed first in 2004. The first one was passed, and the second one in 2016 by the citizens. The first tax that began in 2004, and they're both 25-year taxes. What the referendum or the legislation says is that both of these taxes will be collected for 25 years or until a certain amount is collected, whichever comes first. So in 2004, that said we would collect that half penny for 25 years from 2004 or until $1.3 billion is collected, whichever comes first. Of that $1.3 billion, $221 million was set aside for greenbelts. The other went for roads, new roads, improve the roads, and mass transit like CARTA. So our portion was $221 million. In the referendum, it also said of that $221 million, $36 million would go straight to the Charleston County Parks and Recreation Commission, CCPRC. They would get that $36 million to buy land for regional county parks. Okay, so the rest remained what we call our program here at the county for rural and urban projects, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. The second tax was passed, as I said, in 2016. That one said that we will collect $2.1 billion, or we'll collect the tax for 25 years or until $2.1 billion is collected, whichever comes first. And then of that 2.1, again, the breakout went to roads, mass transit, and then greenbelts, and greenbelt's portion was 10% or $210 million. Okay? So some of the things that I wanted to remind you about as far as the program, and we get into the details of it, are the ordinances and the board. And this is a little bit of the change that's happened since the first round. We still have Ordinance 1343, which set up the Greenbelt Advisory Board as the primary advisory body for the Greenbelts program. They review and revise the Greenbelt Plan every 5 years, and that's what we just went through this last couple of years. They did a review of the plan in looking at how this new 2016 tax could be spent, making those recommendations to council. So that was why it took a little bit of time to go through that review this time. They prepared and delivered those findings to council, and council has approved that. And then when they were doing that, they received a lot of public input, and you all hopefully participated in the survey that we had online. It was a great response. We had over 1,000, I believe, responses. So it was really, really awesome response to that. So with the new 2017 Greenbelt Plan update, a couple of things that are big changes. If you remember in the first rendition of the program, we had rural projects that went to the Greenbelt Bank Board for review and then on to County Council. The urban projects went first to what we call a Urban Grants Review Committee, then on to the Charleston County Parks and Recreation Commission, then to council. So we had two kind of separate programs that had two separate bodies the projects went through. And the Greenbelt Advisory Board was kind of overseeing that as kind of they looked at the policies and they evaluated the program and they made policy recommendations to council. The Greenbelt Advisory Board never reviewed projects. Those went to those other bodies. That has changed. With the plan update in 17, now the Greenbelt Bank Board has been eliminated. It no longer exists. Neither does the Urban Grants Review Committee. So all projects, both rural and urban, will go first through a subcommittee of the Greenbelt Advisory Board. That will be made up of, I think we're up to 6 members now. I think that's where we left it the last time. Of the subcommittee, there'll be 6 members. They'll review all the projects. They will make recommendation to the complete GAB, the full Greenbelt Advisory Board, who then will make recommendation to County Council. So both projects, rural and urban, will go to them. Okay, so yes, I'm sorry, Ashley.
Has a subcommittee been selected?
It hasn't been firmed up. We've got some volunteers, but where we are, the Greenbelt Advisory Board is a 14-member board. 9 of those members, actually, I'm sorry, 11 of those members are appointed basically by county council. Each council member has an appointee, so that's 9. And then the chair has an appointee, has 2 extra appointees, one for the rural north and rural south ends of the county. And then Charleston, North Charleston, and Mount Pleasant each get a representative on the board. So that's the 14 members. Their terms are coterminous with county council. So since we've got some changes on council with the election that happened, we may have some changes on the Greenbelt Advisory Board. So they wanted to wait until January to firm that up. But we do have 7 members who've said they'd like to serve, and it may be those 7 members. They're waiting to confirm that once all the new board is seated in January. Okay, so the Greenbelt Plan, you've heard me talk about that. They've been reviewing that. We have what's called, of course, the Charleston County Comprehensive Greenbelt Plan. That was approved in 2006. It's actually been approved twice by County Council as a standalone document. And then when they did that, they also recommended that it be approved as part of the county's comprehensive land use plan. So it's actually an addendum to that. So it has gone through a lot of public input and scrutiny and a lot of public support, thankfully. So what the Greenbelt Plan basically says is, this is what we think our Greenbelt program should look like. This is how we think we should spend our Greenbelt funds on, the things we should spend it on, and how that should be done. So you see here the different types of green space that are included in the Greenbelt Plan. The legislation that came from the state that said we could levy this tax to include greenbelts, all it said was, it said transportation-related projects, mass transit, and greenbelts. That's it. So we were like, okay, if I ask each one of you what that meant, you probably have however many of you there's an answer for. So in the very beginning, back in 2005, when the plan was created, one of the first things the Greenbelt Advisory Board did was come up with a definition of greenbelts, what we thought that meant for our community, and it includes all of these types of green spaces, okay? So you've heard me talk also about the rural and the urban programs. This is our county map. You'll see that in the middle, along with the Sea Islands down there at the bottom, that Seabrook and Kiowa down at the bottom, we have an urban core. When we were going through and crafting the Greenbelt Plan, it became very apparent that the rural and the urban areas had different needs. And so it made sense to kind of separate those into 2 different programs. And so what was recommended in the 2004 sales tax was the funding that we had for the rural and urban projects, the money should be split 70% to the rural, and you see that down there. I got a little doohickey here. The rural program, if you can see it, 70% out of the 2004 funds go to rural, 30% of the 2004 funds go to urban. So that's how we've been operating over since 2000. We started really accepting projects in 2007. So since that time, that's how the money's been split. With the new funding that came in 2016, the Greenbelt Advisory Board recommended that council relook at that and split the money, the new money from 2016, 50-50 between the rural and urban. Maintain the current 30-70 or 70-30, however you want to say it, rural urban from 2004, but the new funds from 2016 would be split 50-50, okay? So that was approved by council. So any questions about that? And I'm going to show you kind of how that works. I'm going to try anyway. David?
Is that right there the absolute boundary demarcation, urban and rural?
The absolute boundary is the county's urban growth boundary. So that's just kind of rendition. I mean, I don't think you could tag that. But that's a good question. If you have a property, if you all are out there looking at properties and you're not sure where it is, if you'll give me a call, or send me an email with the TMS number, I can look it up. Because there are some properties right on the line. We've had projects that actually the urban growth boundary cut down the middle when it was a couple of parcels, so you had it right on the line. So yeah, that's a very good question. That's just kind of a rendition. It's pretty close, but I have an actual from our mapping planning folks, because that definition is actually in the county's comprehensive land use plan, and that's the one we adopted, so it would be consistent. Yes, ma'am. Urban unincorporated are included in the urban funds, but we've used the COGS population data to determine the population of those urban unincorporated areas, so they'll have their own pot of funds. which was how it was done last time as well. Mhm. Yes, and I'll show you those numbers in just a moment. Any other questions about that? It gets a little bit confusing, I know, but trust me, it's confusing. So if you have any questions, truly, it's okay. I think I've got the numbers, a handle on them, and I'm going to show them to you. But again, splitting the numbers, it's not too difficult because most of the funding from 2004 has been exhausted. But we think we'll have about 30, I want to confuse you even more. As I said, when the 2004 tax was passed, we said we would levy it for 25 years or until $1.3 billion was collected, right? So when that program first started, the citizens were concerned, as everybody was, kind of like how we are now, about how much we're developing so quickly. And they were worried that if we just relied on the annual revenues that came in each year from the sales tax to buy land, the land would either not be available, down the road. Because we wouldn't have that much money right now to do anything with, or it would be so expensive because land just gets more expensive that we wouldn't be able to afford it. So back in 2004, the decision, or 2007 really, the decision was made that we would borrow the money. We'd issue bonds, borrow the money, and then go ahead and try to protect as much land as possible with the cash on hand, and then use the revenues to pay back those funds. So what we had to do was say, okay, this is how much money we have from the sales tax. If you remember, well, you know what, I think I actually, here we go. This will help. As I said, there was $221 million from the 2004 sales tax. $36 million right off the top went to the PRC, okay? So that left us, whatever that difference is, 90 million, I think, or something like that. We looked at that and said, okay, first of all, we got to pay our staff. Thank you. So we had to set some aside for admin. So that's about $11 million. But that's over 25 years, which equates to $440,000 a year, okay? So you set that aside, set the $36 million aside for the PRC, then you say, okay, now you have this pot of money left. I think it wound up being like $150 million. And so we had to look at it and say, if we want to borrow money and buy land with this, how much of it can we borrow and reserve of this pot of money, reserve enough back to pay off what we're going to borrow? Because of course, you got to pay it back with interest. So the financial gurus here did their calculations and decided that $95 million, we could borrow that, use it to buy land, and reserve enough back to pay back the $95 million plus interest based on the revenues that come in each year. So when we started the 2004 sales tax program, we thought we had, on top of the $36 million that the PRC has, we thought we had an additional $95 million to buy urban and rural, or to fund urban and rural projects, okay? So that $95 million was split 70% to rural, $66.5 million, 30% to the urban, $28.5 million, okay? So that's where we were. In 2014, we exhausted all those rural funds. And we almost have exhausted all the urban funds. There's a little bit left, and I'll show you that in a minute. But where I was going with the breakdown of the funding, remember, it was all a projection, what we thought the interest rates were going to be, what we thought the revenues were going to be. You're talking about a 25-year span. So when we borrowed the money in 2000, I think the borrowings were like 2009 and 2011. We did 2 borrowings. Well, if you can remember, about that time, the market went, well, it was a scary moment because the revenues went, and if you remember, we borrowed as if we were going to get $1.3 billion. Well, if you remember, it said you're going to get $1.3 billion or you're going to collect the tax for 25 years, whichever comes first. So we were like, holy moly, the 25 years is going to come before the $1.3 billion. So what they did was they refinanced the debt, which was a good thing because we got lower interest rates because of the downturn in the economy. So that debt that we had planned on paying a higher interest rate on, it wasn't as much. So that pot of money that we reserved to pay off that debt service and the pot of money that we set aside for admin, we didn't spend as much as we thought. We're not spending $440,000 a year on admin. We spend a little over $200,000, believe it or not. So those monies, that pot of money for pay off debt service and pay admin, we're not plucking out of it like we thought. So it's, it's collecting because it's coming in annual revenues each year. So right now, based on how it's coming in, we think that through the rest of the life of the 2004 sales tax, which will go through like 2030, I believe, or 2031, we will have an additional $30 million for Greenbelt projects. Again, that's a projection. Anything can happen, but that's our thought right now. So you would take that $30 million, of course, and then split it 70% for rural, 30% for the urban. Have I completely confused everybody? Everybody's with me? Okay, cool. I know it's very all over the place, but that's how the first sales tax works, okay? And it will continue that way. That didn't change. All right, so, yes, I'm sorry.
In terms of that, you said that will go through
2030 or 2031.
So with the fact that it was reserved and how is that money going to be distributed over time? Like how will that be allocated to different funds?
Yeah, and whereas I say it's in a pot, it's really not. We're collecting as the revenues come each year, we're paying off the debt and paying admin. So we don't have a pot of money per se that we're taking out of. We just think that pot of money that we thought would be used for that, we don't need as much right now, we don't think. So those revenues are coming in each year. What they will do is the finance staff will look at, once we pay off that stuff, how much, for instance, in next year's revenues, however many millions we get in on the 2004 sales tax, they'll pay off what they're supposed to pay off. Any residual will be set aside for projects. What that number is, I don't know yet. I can tell you this, and when we get to the specifics of where we are with the current application cycle, as I said, in 2014, the rural funds were exhausted. Pretty much the urban funds have exhausted. And those funds have been kind of adding up over the years because we haven't had to pay as much in debt service. We haven't paid as much in admin. So they've been kind of stacking up. So right now we have a good bit of money on hand from the 2004 sales tax. We actually think we have $10 million for projects, okay, right now. That won't be $10 million every year. That's been adding up over all these years of the sales tax, so we haven't had to spend as much on debt service and admin. So right now we have $10 million. I don't know right now what that'll look like in the future as far as revenues. It won't be that much. I don't know how much it will be, but it won't be $10 million, I can tell you that. But I don't know the exact, but it'll be an annual amount. We'll get I believe it'll be enough for an annual amount that will add to the revenues from the 2016 sales tax.
Is there like a milestone at which you will have a read on what that amount would be for next year's?
I hope so, yes. I'm actually thinking it might be soon, David, because what happens with the sales tax is, of course, it's all collected by the state, Department of Revenue. Because, when you pay a sales tax, there's a lot of stuff in there. It's not just us taxing, on that sales tax. So it goes to the state, then they send the counties or the local option sales tax back to the areas. We don't get it till about this time of the year. So we don't even really know what our revenues are going to be in about till this time of the year. So hopefully I will have an idea soon. Yeah.
And that would be the money going to this cycle we're applying to the next one in 2020.
Yes, or the end of 19, early 2020, however we wind up doing it.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Did I see another hand? Ashley.
So the $10 million you currently have on hand, is that sort of figured into the allotments and RTS?
Yes. Yes, it sure is. And I will show you, absolutely, and I'll show you that. Because if you remember, when I announced the funding cycle, I said there's $20 million available, 12 for rural, 8 for urban, 10 from the 2004 sales tax, and 10 from the 2016. It just kind of worked out that way. Isn't that interesting? So that's where we are. So that's where it came from, okay? So as I said, the 2016 sales tax, those funds will be split 50-50. So you'll see I've got 210, but I've got 100 million each. That's because you want to be conservative. Again, we're not guaranteed to get that 210 million because, again, the revenues, unfortunately, could fall. You never know what's going to happen with the economy. So I'm being a little bit conservative. At the end of the 2016 sales tax as we go along, there may be more funds available. But right now, I'm just saying 100 million each, just to kind of give you an idea of what, in the end, funds will be available if everything goes the way it should. Okay? So, talking about the urban funds. First of all, as I said, the rural funds have been exhausted from the 2004 sales tax. We have spent no money from the new sales tax. The 2016, we've spent no money from that. So all these expenditures are from the 2004 sales tax. What's remaining right now, you'll see just the urban, the way it worked, you saw that the 30% went to the urban areas. That urban money was then further allocated down to the municipalities that fall inside that urban growth boundary. So Ravenel, Meggett, McClellanville, Hollywood, they're in the rural areas. So this is just the municipalities inside the urban growth boundary, okay? And what they decided was we would base it on their population percentage, their Charleston County population percentage. Okay, so you'll see here, originally from the 2004 sales tax, each of those municipalities, how much funds they were awarded to date, how many acres they've protected to date, and what they've got remaining. And you see most of them have exhausted all of their funds. The city of North Charleston has the largest chunk. They actually have the bulk of the funds remaining. And you'll see there the unincorporated had a pot of funds, and again, that will continue with the new money as well. Okay, any questions about that?
So the same population distribution is going to be?
No, good question, Matt. It's not. We actually updated it with the 2010 census. Yes. Okay, so the goals. One of the things about the Greenbelt Plan, y'all may remember this, is that we set goals in the program to try to achieve that. We wanted to protect 40,000 acres in the Greenbelt, part of the Greenbelt Plan. Where we came up with that number was when the plan was established, it said that we need to protect 30% of the land area of Charleston County. That equates to 200,000 acres. There's a little over 600,000 acres in the county. So 200,000 acres to protect. We also did, at the time the plan was created, back in 05, 06, we did an inventory, or our consultant did an inventory, and at that time, we had about 160,000 acres already protected. So of that 200,000, 160,000 was already protected. So that's where we got our goal to fill in that gap of 40,000 acres to get to the 200,000. So in the Greenbelt Plan, it says that all those acres don't have to be done through the Greenbelt program. And we probably knew it wouldn't be because land's just really expensive to try to buy. Can you imagine trying to buy 40,000 acres with $95 million? It sounds like you could do it, but you really can't. It's really, really tough. So throughout this time, we've had our partners, you all, a lot of y'all sitting here in the audience, who've been getting land protected outside of our program. So between what the Greenbelt program has done and our partners have done since 2006 or 7, we now are just about at the 40,000 acres. Pretty much in essence, we've met it, I'll be honest with you. And you'll see the breakdown here. You remember the Greenbelt program had that 40,000 acres was broken into 6 components: rural Greenbelt lands, the Francis Marion National Forest, low country wetlands, the PRC regional lands, urban parks, and greenway corridors. And you'll see the percentage of the target that we met. We exceeded the Francis Marion goal. We exceeded the wetlands goal. PRC exceeded their goal. But there's 3 goals that we didn't meet, and that's the rural lands, the urban lands, and the corridors. Okay? And further to talk about the status of where we are, as I mentioned about the funding, as I said, we have our rural and urban program. Of those 37 plus, almost 38,000 acres that were protected, we did 21,170. If you'll see over there, the over 18,000 was protected through our urban and rural. The PRC did another about 5,000 rather, with a total of 21. And if you total those up, you'll say, wait a minute, 18 and 4 doesn't equal 21,000. The reason it doesn't, we did some joint projects with the PRC. So in the 18,000 and the 4,800, they're counted twice, but that 21,000 is an unduplicated count, so it's a true acreage count. And then the funds awarded, the council has awarded $96 million through the urban and rural programs. PRC has exhausted all of their funds, the $36 million. So to date, $132.2 million has been spent or awarded for Greenbelt projects. So what's remaining, as I said, the $1.6 million, just about, it's actually gone down a little bit since that number, but about $1.5 million left, and that's all in urban for our programs. The PRC has no funding left, and there's the net, about $1.5 million left in our urban program. So that's where we are right now, okay? So here's the numbers. And I've walked you through most of this already, so hopefully it'll make sense. It's a lot of numbers, I know, but hopefully it'll make sense. So as you remember, I told you, the first sales tax, which is the 2004 sales tax, it's still going to be split 70-30, okay? The second sales tax, or the 2016 sales tax, is going to be split 50% each, rural and urban. Remember I said we thought we would have $30 million left in the first sales tax. So if you apply the 70-30 to that, $21 million would go to rural, $9 million to urban. Over the life of the second sales tax, I'm being conservative and saying $200 million instead of the $210. You split that 50-50. That'd be $100 million each. So here are the totals. From here going forward, the rural program should have about $121 million when it's all said and done. They don't have it today when it's all said and done. 109 for the urban when it's all said and done. So that brings you to the 230. Okay? So remember I said in the 2004 sales tax, there was a decision made to borrow the money up front. That decision has not been made at this time. So we're not borrowing any money right now. So it's going to be, as it stands right now, the funds will be issued on an annual basis. What we have for the current annual funding cycle is that $20 million. Where we got that from is we think, we know, we got $10 million on hand from the first sales, or the 2004 sales tax. You split that 70-30. That's $7,000 for rural, $3,000 for urban. We've got we've actually had done 2 years of collections on the 2016 sales tax. So we know how much we have on hand from it as well, and it's $10 million. So you split that 50-50. So that's $5 million each. So that's how we got our total to $20 million, $12 million for rural, $8 million for urban. Is that plain as mud? Okay. So as I said, the urban funds are then further allocated down to the urban municipalities. And what that looks like, and this is based on just what we have right now, the $8 million. This isn't the total expected allocation based on all the funding that we anticipate to get from now to the end of the sales tax. This is just what we have right now, because that's what matters. That's what we have on hand. So that $8 million for urban, if I can get my little clicker thing to work, there it is. The $8 million for urban, you see here it's broken down by each of the municipalities. You'll notice there's another municipality that's in there that wasn't last time, and that's Somerville. The town of Somerville has actually annexed into County of Charleston. So they have some population. And then the unincorporated, Ashley, you'd asked about, or I'm sorry, Helen, I think you'd asked about that. The unincorporated has their pot right there. And this was all based on, information from the COG. I'm going to be real honest with you guys. It's really difficult to determine the population of the urban unincorporated. It's pretty easy for everybody else because you can go to the census data. But the county's urban growth boundary doesn't mean anything to the census. So if you pull a census tract for an urban area that's unincorporated, our line might go right through it. You see what I'm saying? So the COG has really good stuff over there, systems and software, to do a pretty good analysis of that. So just so you'll know. And then another kind of different item, the town of James Island, my little thingy won't work. Town of James Island, they actually were not incorporated in 2010. So we asked the COG to give us their population for the first full year they had, and it was like 2012 or 2013, because I think the town was actually incorporated in 2012. So that's actually your population for 2013. Okay? That's about as fair as we can be right now. Okay? Any questions about that? And this is what's available now. So any of the municipalities out there, urban municipalities that are thinking about applying, this is what you have available. From the old, well, actually, that's not completely true. The ones that have a balance from the first one, I didn't add it in. I apologize. I should have done that. So again, it's not very many of you. So if you have a balance from the first one that you saw, then it would be added into this. Or should be added to this. Yes, ma'am.
PRC no longer has a pot of money, so how do they?
They can apply through the program. If they have a rural project, they would submit a rural application. If they have land that falls in one of these areas, of course, they could easily apply in the urban unincorporated. They'd be competing with the other urban unincorporated projects. If there's a project in a municipality, they have to go to that municipality and get permission from you all to apply for your funds. You have to bless that. And that's with any organization. If there's any organization that wants to use these funds that's in your urban municipality, they have to come to you and get your blessing. And that's a requirement of the application. We have to have a resolution from that municipality saying, yes, you say it's okay if they apply for your funding. Yes, David?
Is there a similar rural distribution?
There's not. That's a good question. The rural funds, the municipalities are out in the rural areas, Hollywood, Megget, all those, they just apply for the rural pot like with everybody else. Yes. Anybody else? Okay. All right. So most of y'all know this, but again, I want to make sure just everybody reminds you, how do we find land to preserve? We don't purchase the funds. Y'all know that. That's why you're here. You all purchase the funds. You apply, but the entity that's going to buy the land is the applicant. I do get phone calls from landowners all the time that say, I'm interested in selling my land. Do you want to buy it? And I have to explain that the county doesn't, but then I try to find out a little bit about their land, and then I oftentimes give them your numbers. And you've probably gotten a call saying, from landowners that Kathy told me to call you. And that's where that comes from. So you all know that it's the municipalities, the other government agencies like the Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife, St. Andrews, Parks and Playground, that work with voluntary landowners, willing landowners to come and apply to buy their funds or to buy interest in buy their land or interest in their land. Also, the main reason this was done is we wanted to not be the managers of this land. You all that manage this land know it's expensive and it is time consuming, and you all are the experts in that. We are not. So that's why we set it up that way, that the county didn't want to buy the land. We wanted you all to do it. We do hold the deed restrictions on it, and we'll continue to do that because we have to protect, be stewards of the public's money, but you all will actually hold and manage that land. Any questions about that? Okay, so who exactly is an eligible Greenbelt Fund recipient? As I said, private landowners will call me. They are not applicants. A private landowner is not eligible because they're wanting to sell the land. It's that entity that will be buying that land interest, whether it's a fee simple interest or conservation easement interest, whatever that is, they will be buying. The applicant is the entity that's buying the land. So it's Charleston County or a municipality in Charleston County, an agency, commission, or instrumentality of the county, a non-for-profit charitable corporation or trust authorized to do business in this state and organized and operated for natural resource conservation, land conservation, or historic preservation purposes, an agency or instrumentality of the United States government. And I will say this definition is pretty much, if you've worked with the State Conservation Bank, it's pretty much their definition except for that line and the next one. The State Conservation Bank doesn't allow, like the federal government, to apply. So anyway, like the Forest Service and Fish and Wildlife, but they can apply, and they have applied and done several projects. And then we've got that catch-all, any other entity that might be approved on a case-by-case basis by Charleston County. Okay, so that is the definition. What are eligible projects? We're here to protect land, so acquisition of land or interest in land. We do allow the funding of some minor improvements that have little to no impact on the land, very little minor, that's what we call it, minor improvements, minor impact on the land. And these were allowed mainly so that the public, if it's going to be a public project, they would have access and usability of the property. So when you apply for a project to purchase land, say if it's going to be a park or whatever, you can also include in your request these 5 improvements: boardwalks, footbridges, unpaved trails, unpaved roadways, unpaved small parking areas. That's it. If you can do other improvements on the property, you just have to find another funding source for that. But these are the ones that the Greenbelt program can fund. Okay, any questions about that? All right. So, oh yes, I'm sorry.
For those improvements, is there a certain percentage of the total project cost?
There's not right now. There's not a requirement. No, sir.
And would culverts be included in a roadway?
If it's part of a roadway or parking lot, I think that would be fine, as long as it's impervious. I believe so. Yeah. I will say this does not include design fees. I need to clarify, honestly, I need to clarify that with the GAB, because back in the day when we had, that was a decision that we had in the application that it would not include the design fees. Because you all know, you could eat up a whole budget with design fees. Them things are expensive. So that does not include that. Okay, did I see another hand? Anybody? Okay, all right. So what you're all here for. Now to get the good stuff. The application process. And again, I'm going to walk you through it here in just a minute, but I just want to give you the overall picture and then we're going to walk through it. This year, or this time, how we're doing, a big thing we're doing differently is we used to require that you would set up a pre-application meeting with staff. Once you decided you wanted to submit an application, you had a project, you'd come in, meet with us, tell us a little bit about the project, and we'd get to have a exchange about it. You could ask questions, and we could ask questions, that kind of thing, provide assistance or whatever. Because most of y'all have gone through this process several times, we didn't want to add another thing you have to do. We are saying, if you want to come meet with us, please do, that we're not cutting that off at all. We're just not requiring it. If you're comfortable not sitting down with us, you know the drill, you got it, that's fine. You don't have to meet with us. Where we're replacing that kind of is we are requiring that you submit what we call a notice of intent form. It's just a really quick one-page form. I'm going to show it to you in a minute. That just tells us a little bit about the program, so we the project, so that we kind of know what's coming in. And then if we do see some questionable or red flags or just something we think, well, maybe we need to ask about this, or have you thought about this, then we can go ahead and relay that back to you so that you don't get too far into the application process and get a hang up. So it just kind of helps us really to help you all, okay? Once you submit that application, you're going to email it to me. I will then send you a link to the first part of an online application process, okay? You'll go on that link and then go through the process of getting to the online application, and that's what I'm going to walk you through in just a minute, okay? So once you complete your online application, for those of y'all who've been through this before, you remember that we used to require, I think it was an original and 10 copies, because I needed an original, of course, for the records, and then there were 9 board members and me. So it was, we're using all 10 of those copies. Of course, as you can imagine, we were killing trees left and right, which for the Greenbelt program doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And it's kind of, costly on your end as well. So this time, all we need really is 2 copies. I still need paper copies of your whole packet, even though you're going to submit everything online, mainly because I do need one for our files. And then once your project's approved, which I'm sure they all will be, when we go to close, I need a copy to attach to the deed, because your application gets attached to our grant agreement that's recorded with the deed. So I'll just need 2 copies this time, once you submit it online, instead of the 11, really, or Matt.
At what point does the intent to apply for the funding become public? So if we're still in negotiations with somebody, at what point does it have to get out?
Good question. Nothing becomes public until it goes to that subcommittee. Even when you submit the application online, it's secure. Only you can see it. I can't even see it until you submit it. When you submit it, then I can. So as you're working on it, I can't even see it. So that's a good question. Everything is secure and it's confidential until it goes to a public body, and that's that subcommittee meeting. So I don't discuss it with anybody. I don't give any information. It stays here. Yes. Okay. So then you'll submit all of that by, as I said, the deadline is February the 28th. The first step is staff. We will review that. We'll review that and then put together some information for that subcommittee. And then we'll also do site visits with you all. As you remember, we'll call and say, hey, we'd like to come out and visit the site. I think the subcommittee members and the board members this time, a lot of them are interested in coming out with us, which is a great thing. So hopefully we'll be able to schedule all that. It may be a little bit hairy getting everybody's schedules together, but hopefully that will work out great because it'd be great for the board members to get out there. And while I'm here, forgive me, I should have recognized we have a board member here. Taylor Scarden is here from the Greenbelt Advisory Board, and I appreciate him being here and taking the time to come and do this and see what we're doing. Forgive me for not saying something to begin with. But so hopefully we'll have board members that will come out and do that with us in the subcommittee. Because once you see the land, it makes all the difference. You can look at pictures all day long, but once you're on the land, it just completely changes your perspective. So we'll be doing that hopefully in that kind of first month time frame. So that would be March. And then we'll be getting, hopefully by mid-March, we'll have our review done and be able to turn this stuff over to the subcommittee. And again, they'll be able to access, at that point, they'll be able to access the online information, but it's not public at that point, and I'll be reiterating that to them as well. But they will have access to it to review your applications. And then hopefully by the 1st of April, that subcommittee can meet to review those applications, put together their recommendations, have those hopefully by the end of April to the GAB, and then go to council in May. So that's kind of the time frame. But that's the decision process. You know that once, and these don't require readings. Once they go to council, the first step is they go to council's finance committee, and then they go to full council, and that's it. They don't have to go through first, second, and third readings. We do reserve the right, if we think there's a project that needs to have a public hearing, if we get some maybe, and council reserves that right as well, that's not required to hold a public hearing. You all can do that if it's a municipality or, well, anybody. Y'all can, if you want to have a public forum and have folks come in and talk about it, but it's not required. But we do reserve the right if we think a project needs that, we can have a public hearing, but in most instances we don't. So it doesn't go through that 3 readings in a public hearing. And then once it's approved by council, we enter into a grant agreement between the county and the applicant or the eligible Greenbelt Fund recipient. And then we start working toward closing. And once the closing's done, that's when we actually disperse the funds. We actually send them to the closing attorney so he can disperse them to the seller and any other vendors. And then from there on out, we come out and monitor the projects each year to make sure that the deed restrictions are being complied with. So that's kind of the whole process in a nutshell. Okay? Any questions? Oh, sorry.
Question over here, just because I don't know the answer.
Oh, yeah.
That notice of intent,
Yes.
does not become public?
No, it won't. Mainly because what Matt said, a lot of these are in negotiations, and no, we keep it all private. And matter of fact, let's say for instance, if you submit a project, and let's say you submit it, and by the April 28th, and before it goes to that subcommittee, the first part of April, something happens, you have to pull the project, they'll never see it. It won't go to, they might see it if they got it for review, but it won't ever be made public. Because until it gets to that public body and that public meeting, it's not made public. And so if you decide to pull it, it would remain that way. David?
And you may be getting to this, but in the budget for the project, what kind of costs are, besides the actual purchase price?
Like the closing cost, mainly? Yes, it's a good question. As I said, the land, the minor improvements, closing cost. The definition basically that we allow are things that are reasonable to a closing. But what that includes is attorney's fees for closing. We can pay for the appraisal. This is after it's approved. So if you have an appraisal done with your application, which we encourage, if it doesn't get approved, we're not going to pay for it, of course. So that's kind of, an expense you're stuck with. But appraisal, survey, we do require that a phase 1 environmental assessment be done, but I don't recommend you do it until after the project's approved. That can be part of that due diligence because we will pay for that, and I wouldn't go to the expense unless you just think you need to of that until it's approved. We will pay the recording fees. We'll pay for the title search. We also pay, actually separate from your project budget, we pay for, well, is that right? I think, yeah, title premiums and the title binder, title insurance premiums. It's probably easier for me to tell you what we don't pay for, and that is deed stamps and property taxes. We do not pay for those things.
How about stewardship?
No. And I just had a question about, I think someone had the landowner brought in a tax attorney to give him advice on selling his property. That's not an allowable cost. It's because it doesn't do with the closing. It's for him deciding, you know what I'm saying, that's his service. So if it's attorney's fees dealing with the closing, then it's fine. Yes, sir.
Do those costs apply only to the landowner, or can they reimburse the applying entity as well? As far as attorney's fees on either side, or just for potential landowner?
No, the attorney, any attorney's fees associated with the closing, whether it be from the applicant or the landowner, it's okay. Yeah, as long as it's closing fees, you know, deal with the closing. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
In preparation of getting the application together, anything that would fall under the approved expenses, can those be applied for reimbursement?
Yes.
Okay, so we don't have to wait until the actual award.
You do, actually. Yes, I'm sorry, you do. It has to be approved before I can issue any funds.
Right, but let's say the appraisal, there is an appraisal that has to be done and it's prior to the award date.
Mhm.
Is that going, will it go retroactive? since
It
it's
will,
fall under
yes.
the approval?
Yes, thank you, I'm sorry, yes. If you have, and that's why I was saying, we really do encourage, we don't require, but we encourage you to submit an appraisal with your project, so that it just makes it easier for everybody, but I know that's an expense up front. Yes, when you, in your budget, you can include that amount that it cost, and then after it's awarded, we will pay retroactively that figure. Mm-hmm. And that's same for the survey or, you know, something like that. Yes, ma'am.
What about any kind of administrative fees, like, for like the nonprofit?
I'd have to probably hear what that fee is, but I think it's just those fees. I don't think so. Yeah. And to let you know, we don't require you to use a certain closing attorney, but the county does have an attorney that will perform closings if you want to utilize them, and they'll take care of everything, and when we work out the cost with them. So that's another option for you. So. But I know lots of times the landowners want to use, or you know, a lot of you all have, especially the municipalities have your own attorneys you want to use. That's fine. I will say though that the deeds have to. One of the steps during the due diligence is that the deed has to be reviewed by our attorney. That's one of the many steps to get to actual closing. So, okay. More questions?
I've got one. Kathy.
Yeah, sure.
Is there a minimum number of points that a project has to have in order to be deemed acceptable?
What we've put in there is that if a project doesn't have 50, the score isn't not 50, it may be deferred. Mm-hmm. So they're looking for at least 50. Okay, and there's all the deadlines. I basically just went through that with you on getting the application period when it opened. Today's the workshop. The deadline's the 28th. During March, as I said, we'll be reviewing the projects, doing staff site visits or board and staff site visits. The GAB review in April, council review in May. Okay. All right. This is our new information. We got a new website. If you haven't seen it, it is the bomb. Peggy and her cohorts up in the IT staff did a wonderful job on that. So if you haven't been out there, we're going to go look at it in just a minute. And then there's my information along with my contact. So if you need to get a hold of me, there I am. And that's actually my cell number, y'all. You can call me whenever, you know. I don't have a life, so y'all, I'm just kidding. Y'all can call me whenever. David.
The scoring criteria,
Yeah.
is that available somewhere?
It is. Yep. Very good. We are going to get right into that. All right. Okay, so let's go. Okay, let's see. Let me do it this way. Yeah. People wanting me. All right, let's see. Greenbelt. It is now Greenbelt. I should have just hit that link in there. That's what I meant to do. Charleston County. Greenbelt.charlestoncounty.org. There it is. Ain't it pretty? Okay, so the video right there, that's the video that's showing downstairs. It's like a 6-minute video. It's really pretty. If you haven't watched it, you really should. Jen put that video together for us. And then there's a bunch of other information. One of the things I just want to point out before I move to the application, if you haven't seen it, there's a tab of public lands that are currently open. This was our biggest driving force of getting this website updated. There's a lot of property out there that the public can get out and enjoy that's been protected with the Greenbelt program, and we want them to know that. Y'all have done an awesome job, and we want them to know that that's property that their sales tax money went to pay for. So if you click on that page, it opens up this page along with, and these are the ones that are currently open. So there's a bunch of other projects we've done, of course, but these are the ones they can get out and enjoy. So if you just pick one to go out, and we'll pick on Pinckney. This is the town of James Island's Pinckney Park. We've got a little bit of information about the park. Because we're not the owner of it, and you see some amenities, we also provide a link to the town's website to get more information about the park, give them a little bit of information about what the Greenbelt program did. There's a video there of the park, and then, of course, pictures, and we'll be adding to those as we go along. So anyway, if you have some friends, if you haven't gone there and looked at it, people are looking for places to enjoy, tell them to get on here, and there's some really beautiful places out there they can get on and enjoy. Okay, so what y'all are okay about that, but what you're here for is that apply button. Okay, so when you are ready to submit your notice of intent, what you're going to do is come up here and hit the apply button, and there's information about the program. A lot of the stuff I've already told you. The urban allocation table is right there in case you want to refresh your memory. Okay. Also, information about the deadline, the funds available, the definition of who can apply, how you can apply, and it talks about the notice of intent form. Pre-application meetings, again, are not required, but if you want to have one, certainly let us know. Okay, so before I go to the notice intent form, all of the instructions on the application is right there. It's got all the information there. I used to email this to you, if you remember, in a packet. It's all there now. So all the ordinance language, all that good stuff is all there, okay? There is a sample application. Someone just asked me about where the criteria is. It's right here. This is, now, when you get online, all these questions are online, but this is what it looks like kind of in a paper format. So it's just a sample to let you see. So if you go down, there's the general questions, information we ask, information about the project. You know, y'all, this all probably looks familiar. We have updated the budget page, make it hopefully more user-friendly, more clear. Here's the criteria. Starts with G, project criteria. It's 16 elements, and it got the scores with them, a lot of information, and it's all there. That's all the criteria, and it goes all the way down. And then we've even got the attachments to show you what attachments are going to be included. Okay? So that's a sample page. So back to, you want to apply, you want to submit a notice of intent form. You click on that page, and this pops up. Now, I think it's fillable. I don't know why. Sometimes when I pop on it, it's fillable, and sometimes it's not. I'm not real sure why. It's something about the computer. Maybe because I'm on, well, I don't know. Computer stuff escapes me lots of times. But anyway, it's only a one-page form. It's not a lot of information. You just, well, I think that is fillable. Yeah, there we go. It is fillable. Name of project, you know, ABV Park. That sounds even better. Okay, you just fill it all out. Give us a little bit of information. Sign it. Then you're going to print it out, sign it, and email it to me, okay? Let me go back. I'm going to close that in a minute, I'm afraid. Once you email it to me, I'm going to send you a link. I'm going to send you back an email with a link that's going to take you to, if I can find it, where's my email? There I am, right there. Let's see. Oh, fudge. Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm having to think, and that's painful for me. Actually, I can give you the link now. I'm about to. It's Greenbelt. Oh. No, I can't either. Anyway, I'm going to give you a link. I'm going to give you a link, and it's going to take you to, dang it. Oh, no, this is the one. It's going to give you a link, and it's going to say, fudge, Rooney. I don't want to. Wait a minute. Let's see.
Risky proposition, putting your email up there.
I know, right? I know. Hey, trust me. Yeah, it is, but that's not the one. It's not the first step, y'all. I mean, that's it. But basically, what's going to happen is I'm going to send you a link, and it's going to give you, I'm going to send you an email. It's going to have a link that's going to take you to this thing that says, welcome to an application process. The application is going to give you some information. Then it's going to have you put in your email address, okay? That email address becomes your password. You know what? Dadgummit, I'm just going to do it here. Y'all still have to send me a... I wonder if that would open up. I bet it's not there anymore. No, it's not. I was afraid it wouldn't. Okay. Let's see. All right, there it is. All right, so I'm going to send you a link. You're going to get this link. Go away. And it's going to say, Greenbelt application, welcome to the Greenbelt online application system. I'm going to give you some information, make you aware of several things. The biggest thing is I want you to remember, and it's going to warn you throughout the application process, you can work on your application. It'll save as it's doing it. You can go back to it and save it. When you hit submit, it's done. You can't fix it no more. You can't change it. You can't edit it. So please don't submit it until you are sure that it is done, okay? Don't submit it till you know, but submit it by the end of the day, February 28th, but please make sure you don't, because once you hit submit, you don't have access to it anymore to edit it. It comes to me, and I'm not changing your applications. So please, and again, there's warnings throughout all this, but that's the big thing, okay? So it talks about, of course, if there's any missing information, whatever, incorrect information, whatever, it could cause it to be deferred and all of that. Of course, my information is there. So what you're going to do is you're going to enter in your email address. That actually becomes your password. Now, several of you may say, okay, we're going to submit 2 or 3 projects, okay? You're going to get a link for every project so that, and you're going to have to keep that link so you can get to that application to make that application secure for you. That's what makes it secure. So anyway, once you submit this application, you are going to get that email that I was showing you. Where's it at? You're going to get an email that looks like this. Thanks for using the Greenbelt's new online application service. And you're going to say, now, it says, do not delete this email. Don't share this link, because this is your link to your secure application for that one project. When you have another project, you're going to get another link for that project. So it may, if you're going to do multiple projects, you may need to tag these, but, just so you know, keep these emails. Okay, so when you click on that, hello, there we go. All right, why isn't it working? Oh, this is another thing. I don't know if this is our website stuff. If that doesn't work, it says right here, if your email click disables hyperlinks automatically, which is what that is, you can click right here, okay? So if that happens to you, which has happened to me every time, I don't know why, I don't know if it's the county's firewalls or what, but if you click right there, here's the application. This is now your secure application for project whatever, okay? Again, if you're doing multiple applications, you're going to have different links for those different applications. because it's got to be secure, because you don't want anybody else looking at your application. I don't want to look at it. Y'all don't want to look at, have somebody else looking at it, okay? So here's the application. Ain't it cool? You'll notice, again, it looks a lot like the sample. A lot of the questions, I just took the information off of the sample one. So once you look at that sample, you have an idea of what information we're looking for. But you see over here, it's in sections. You can skip over to sections. But once you do, if you haven't completed a section, it'll turn red. It'll say it saved it. You saw it popped up there and it saved it. It just tells you now you haven't finished it. So you have to go back and finish that later. But you can hop to any, see how it says successfully saved for later? So you don't have to finish every section. You can work on it along as you need to, okay? And then it says budget incomplete, all kinds of stuff, okay? So this is the application information. Of course, the landowner's name, their mailing address, the property address, what jurisdiction the property is in, if it's in a municipality, how many parcels there are, the acreage distribution. You can't enter in that field. It's going to add it for you. You wouldn't believe how many math mistakes are made on this. So forested, cleared, wetlands. Now, I'm already thinking there's going to be some overlap in that, so there may be some problems with that. So y'all let me know, because there might be some forested wetlands. So I'll let y'all deal with that and then talk to me later. The tax map numbers, the current zoning status. Again, these were all questions that were on the original application, if y'all remember. The assessor's plat, deed. Describe the current uses that are happening on the land. Is the site accessible by a road? If you say yes, it's going to pop up and say, is it improved or unimproved road? And then what's the road name? Okay. Water access, if there is, again, the type of access. If you say it's on like a freshwater stream or creek, it's going to ask you the creek name, if it has one. Hopefully it has one. Or tidal creek. If you say pond, I think that was going to go away. Because I've got it open. You see you can do a bunch. But see, when that went away, when I just have ocean or pond, that question went away about what was the name of the creek or the river. Okay, so that's the first section. You go to the project section. It's just asking, are you applying for rural or urban funds? What is your project name? And I would encourage you all, and I know it's difficult at times because you don't know up front, but if you have some idea, especially if it's going to be a public park, if you have an idea of what it might be named in the future, go ahead and name that now, because we're running into a lot of what you submitted, the name changes once it becomes a park, and now we've got a project named something that's not named the same as the park. And we have to keep it that original name, because that's how it went through the whole process when council approved it. I mean, we're still noting the other, but if you can help us with that, that would be really, really great. But again, I know it's not always possible, but if it is, that'd be fantastic. Okay, so project name, and then a brief description of the project. Okay, the property itself. Oh, is that where I was? I'm sorry, I was on property. I'm so sorry, y'all. I thought that looked funny. The very first part's the application. I apologize. The name of the organization, is the organization a nonprofit, your mailing address, all the information. Here is the authorized agent. That's the person who can sign this document, because again, it's going to get attached to the deed, and it's also the person that can sign the deeds for your organization. That authorized agent, okay? And then the contact person, that's probably going to be you all, and sometimes it might be the same, most of the time it's different. Okay? So I'm sorry, that was the first section. Then briefly explain how the applicant will ensure the project will be completed. Again, that was language in the old application, it was just in a different place. That's basically how are you going to carry out, getting this done. And then provide the total acres of land that you've preserved in the state. It might be none. And you'll notice it says the fields required. You got to put something in these fields, hopefully information, but if it's not applicable, just put in A. We did that so you don't forget something. We don't, because if you've got missing information, it could affect your application going forward. So we want to make sure we try to catch everything so you don't slip up. Okay? And then again, briefly describe the land your organization has preserved in the state. If you say up here how many acres, what does that involve? A lot of people submit a big list of their projects if you've protected a lot of land. You don't have to do that. You can just, in general, say, these are kind of the lands that we've protected for these purposes. Okay? And then if you remember, we added this question back a few years ago. If there is a broker involved, like a real estate agent or a broker of any kind that's going to get a commission off of the sale, we need to know that. And you put that information here. Okay? So I'm sorry, that was the first section. I jumped down to the third. That was the first section. We looked at the project, the property information. That's what we looked at a minute ago. Remember, that's when it asked about the acreage, the tax map number, the zoning status, whether was it accessible by a road, did it have water access on then, okay? And then you go to the acquisition information. Is it a fee simple purchase? Is it a conservation easement? Are you submitting an application for minor improvements only? And you're like, what the heck is that? That only, and you'll see it says C note below, that's only for our beach communities. This was approved back many years ago, about 10 years ago, I think. The beach communities, as you saw, probably when we looked at the urban allocation, they had difficulty finding land that they could buy with their allocation because it was relatively small, especially considering how expensive it is out in the beach communities. So we allowed them, if they had land they already owned that they wanted to keep protected, we could pay for those allowable minor improvements on that property. And we've had several municipalities do that. Town of James Island did a wonderful project out on Station 16 through their protected accreted land. So that's, and then also the City of Folly Beach has done one at the near the washout for ADA accessible boardwalk. So lots of good projects that way, but that's only for the beach communities. Everybody else, it doesn't apply to you all. Ashley?
Could everyone else apply for minor improvements for a project?
In the past?
Like, like in the future, so let's say you awarded a project, but you don't have enough in your allotment to do the minor improvements, could you in the subsequent years, when you got a new allotment for minor improvements on that board?
That's a good question. I don't know. I would say possibly. And that's, Ashley's asking a question because one of the biggest things we're going to struggle with, I think you all saw, is the availability of funding. Since we don't have that big pot, that $95 million that we had initially, there's just a little bit of money available now. And those urban municipalities just have small chunks of what they're going to get now. And so that's one of the things we're dealing with, is how to help them do projects that are available now when they don't have funds available. So I would say that's probably a possibility, Ashley. I just don't know. I haven't been asked that question. So, but I would say that's probably a possibility we could look at. Catherine?
Do the funds have to be used on a Greenbelt property?
Mm-hmm.
Or can it be any property just protected? What if it was protected under, just like, under conservation?
It has, if you're, the only minor improvement applications that are available are for the beach communities, and it has to be on land. It probably won't be Greenbelt land. It will be land but they've got to be willing to put it under Greenbelt restrictions. They're basically donating the land, if you will. Okay, any other questions? Okay, and then the method of payment. Most of these are going to be like a bargain sale, a lump sum payment, a reimbursement of the land, a prior land purchase. Now, this was one of the big changes that I wanted to let everybody know about, because we think that we're going to go to an annual funding cycle. Under the 2004 sales tax, we had usually 2 funding cycles a year, try to coincide with the State Conservation Bank. But now, because of the relying on the annual revenues to come in each year, we're probably only going to do an annual funding cycle. So we used to allow that, let's say, for instance, you submitted a project and you already saw the timeline. It takes months for these things to get through the process. You may need to move on this project now and get it bought. We said that if that happened, if you submitted an application and you want to go ahead and purchase it, you could do it if you'd already submitted your application and it hadn't been approved, knowing that you're assuming a risk. There's no guarantee council would approve it, but if you wanted to go ahead and do that, then we could reimburse that cost. And a lot of municipalities actually have done that. North Charleston's done it in very many occasions. So now what we want to do is, because we've got that year issue, the annual funding every year, and it's a longer time span, we're going to say if the acquisition happened within a year of your application date, then it's eligible to go through the process. There's no guarantee it'll be funded. So again, the risk is on you all, to buy it. But let's say, like the deadline's February 28th. If you bought something back in June of this year, you could submit it. If you bought it in June or before, February of 28, or whenever you submit your application. If you submit your application by December 31st and you bought something before December 31st of last year, after December 31st of last year, is that right? Yeah. Then you could, then it would be eligible. So it's a year of your application date. The acquisition happened within a year of your application date. Because I know some of y'all are looking at that. So you don't have to wait till February 28th to submit your application. You can submit it earlier. So if you have a land you've purchased you might like to be reimbursed for, if it happened within 12 months of when you submit your application, then it can go through the process. Again, there's no guarantee it will be funded at all. I can't guarantee that, but you can. It is, whereas before it wouldn't have been eligible to be submitted, it is now. And that's what that's asking. Matt?
If we miss this application date and our leadership doesn't want to take that risk, are we going to have to wait until February of 2020 to apply again?
Yes.
So there's no opportunity for like 6 months down the road, another application cycle with the same, whatever's left?
Yeah. Let me say this. That's how it's set up now. What I would recommend is there's nothing about that can't be changed. That's how it's set up now, especially with the municipalities. If you have funding available, I think what it needs is the GAB to consider that, because your funding is available to you if you have it in your allocation and it's on hand.
Right. Sometimes deals are hard to put together by that deadline, and a lot of people aren't going to sit on a deal for a year
Yeah.
waiting for you to come back around.
Yeah. Right now, we just have the application period we have, but the consideration of doing something different is plausible. Yeah. Okay, anybody else? Okay, so that is the acquisition. I think that's everything on the acquisition section right there. Then if you go to the market value, remember I had said we would like for you to submit an appraisal with your project, but it's not required. If you say, it says, do you plan on including an appraisal with your application? If you say yes, you put the appraised market value, and right here is where you submit your attachment, your appraisal. PDF, scan it in. Hopefully maybe your appraisal will give it to you in a PDF version. That'd be easier. But if not, scan it in and attach it right there. Okay, you just pull it up and attach it. Okay. Does the land contain structures? And if yes, remember the program cannot pay for structures. So we can just pay for the value of the land. So we ask, what is the estimated value of those structures? Okay? And hopefully, I would recommend, because you're going to have to do it, so if you're going to submit an appraisal, the property has structures and they have value, have the appraiser break that out for you, so you don't have to do it later. Okay? Let's go back. Let's say you said no, you don't have an appraisal. It's going to ask you what the estimated fair market value is. You still have to provide that, because you can't, Greenbelt funds cannot be used to pay for land above the appraised fair market value, the current appraised or fair market value, okay? So we want to know what method you use. Maybe you looked at some current sales around, whatever method. If you don't have an appraisal, you don't have to submit an appraisal. It'd be great if you could. But if, whatever method you use to come up with the value. Because even, let's say, for instance, you have a project, you think the land is worth $100,000. You don't have an appraisal. The project goes through and it's approved. We have to have an appraisal before you close. So we have an appraisal done, and it comes back at $90,000. We're only paying $90,000. And what that can cause is some hurt feelings with the landowner, especially if they're expecting $100,000 and now we're only going to pay $90,000. So that's why we really encourage you to get an appraisal, so you and the landowner know what you're dealing with and there's no surprises at the end of the process. Because by ordinance, we're not allowed to use Greenbelt funds to pay for land above the appraised value. Now, you can submit a request. That's where the bargain sale comes in. Let's say it's valued at $100,000, but the landowner's willing to donate $10,000 of value, and so we're only going to pay $90,000. They can write that off, of course, as a donation. That's a bargain value, and that's great. Then you get to use that for match. So that's all good. Or if, let's say, the landowner wants more than the appraised value, again, you can submit that request. we'll pay the appraised value, and then the difference between that and what you're going to pay the landowner is another funding source. So those are still viable projects. It's just Greenbelt funds can't pay above the appraised value. Okay? All right, and those go away. All right, so that's the budget part. Now we go, the market value part. Now we go to the budget. So what we've done is hopefully made this a little bit easier to understand what we're talking about. Land. Lots of times, because you're going to have a purchase price, and normally that's the appraised value. As I said, sometimes it's not. So let's say, for instance, we'll use that scenario I just used. The land's worth $100,000, but the landowner is willing to sell it for $90,000. So they're doing a bargain sale. So you put the $90,000 here, because that's the Greenbelt amount of funds you're asking for, and the $10,000 there for match. And that'll make the total $100,000. That doesn't mean you're going to pay them $100,000. That just shows that they got a match and for the bargain sale. Okay? Or conservation easements, you all know this. The value of the easement is $100,000. The landowner is going to donate 2/3 of that. So you put the $33,000 here, the $66,000 there, and it comes out to the $100,000 there. Okay? Allowable minor improvements. Again, we've noted again here the definition of what those allowable minor improvements include. That's all. This is what we can pay for out of the Greenbelt program, and they're listed right there. You can put that amount in there. Let's say you're going to put those things on the property, but y'all are going to pay for it, or you got a PARD grant or something like that. Again, that would be match. You're not going to ask us for it, but that'd be match. And then the other improvements. Remember I said you can put other improvements on the property, like a picnic shelter, a bathroom, water fountain, whatever that might be. That's not an allowable cost, so there's no button there, but it's match. If you're going to put playground equipment, whatever that might be, that's match. Okay? And then the environmental survey, that's that phase 1. This will probably be an estimate. You might know exactly what it will cost, but again, I don't recommend you have this done until after the property or the project is approved. So you can put an estimated amount in there, and we'll pay for that if it's approved. Okay? And I would estimate probably a little bit high, because if you say it's going to cost $3,000 and only cost $2,500, we're only going to pay $2,500. But at least you've got it covered. You won't come up short in the end. Or if that's a cost that either the landowner or you or some other source, again, that could be match. Same thing for the appraisal, same thing for the survey and the plat, and then closing costs. Those things I said we could pay for, those attorney's fees, the recording fees, documentation, that's the recording documentation fees, title search, etc. Again, those might be match, or those might be things you want us to pay for, however you want to work that. And then it's going other things. And this, I don't even know what all that could be, but y'all will probably come up with something. The thing is, we know that projects are so different when you're dealing with real estate. We're trying to make sure we can't allow those unique things that might pop up in your transaction to be covered. So there might be a place that there's some other cost in there. There's not any other cost that we can pay for. That's it. But there might be some other costs involved that you could care for, or you could use for match. And then again, it's going to total it for you. And it's going to total it down here so you don't have to. Okay?
Kathy,
Yes.
would you mind scrolling back to the top?
Sure.
real quick?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understood
Uh-huh.
the way that you described the land
Mhm.
portion. If, in the case of a conservation easement transaction, the total appraised value is $100,000, the value of the easement is $30,000, but we're only requesting, say, the $10,000 from the bank, would you put the value?
Of the easement, the appraised value of the easement, because that's what we're buying.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right. Yes, sir. Okay, any other questions about the budget? Yes, sir.
Are you looking for any estimates from contractors for the minor improvements, or just a number provided with the application?
Yeah, you can guesstimate. Yeah, if you have those things, that would be wonderful. So you have some idea. Because I will say this, if you go in and kind of try to inflate numbers, inflate and look like really inflated numbers for some improvements, they may question those costs. But just to kind of get your match up there. So if you have it, that'd be great. But you don't have to. No, sir. Okay? Any questions? Okay, so now to the criteria. This is the largest part, of course, of the application. And this is, as I said, these 16 points. Okay, go away. Thank you. Meets the definition of the Greenbelt program. These are all the options. It tells you choose the definition that most applies, okay? Because you're going to say, well, this project, it does have passive green space on it, but it also has some heritage landscape, parts to it, and there's going to be some active space on it. Pick the one that most applies. If it's going to be passive green space, I'd say pick that over active because you're going to get 8 points instead of 3. But let me say this, if that's not the main feature of it, be honest, really. Pick what's really the purpose of how it really meets the definition, okay? All right. Then once you click that, we want to give you an opportunity to explain that. So we say, how is it that it meets that definition? And these are, I think you can put a gazillion characters in here. Please don't do that. You can't. No. You say what you need to say to sell your project or explain your project. Okay, I'm teasing. But these expand, so don't think that blocks all you have. It will expand and let you provide as much information as you would like. And then I even asked the question, if it meets more than one definition, because you only get to choose one, explain how it meets the others. Because in the reviewing it, we want to know that. Okay? Okay. The next question, it meets the Greenbelt vision. You choose one of these. The Greenbelt vision is cities and villages surrounded by green. That's our hub and spokes model. So it's really the linkages, how it links up, and that's why you'll see a lot of this is about linkages. It's a greenway for public waterway access and use, linking to those waterways. That was if you remember, that was a big deal with the public. They're losing their public accessibility to water frontage because it's getting developed. Linkage to a blue trail, connects to a trail or corridor that connects to a green space or a neighborhood or a retail job center. It's a green space connected to a trail or corridor or another green space or a neighborhood or a school. It may not do any of those, but I imagine it probably does. Yes, ma'am.
Back on the first question.
Yeah.
where it had the points,
The definition? Uh-huh.
the very last one.
Uh-huh.
Seems a little low to me, the productive green space. So like for a farm or something like that, it only gets 1 point.
The reason that is, Catherine, is when we did that public survey, this is one of the questions we asked the public to rank what was most important, and we put the points, assigned the points, how they ranked exactly in the survey. That's why. Good question. Okay. So then, like I said, meets the Greenbelt vision. Again, places to explain how it does that. And then how it meets the Greenbelt system components. Those are those 6 goals that we had. Remember the rural lands, Francis Marion, wetlands, PRC, urban, and corridors. Now, you see they're not in that order. These are actually listed in order of the first 3 are the ones that didn't get met. If you remember, the greenway corridors, the urban, and the rural, they're listed in order of how we missed them. So honestly, the Greenbelt goal was met, but they're all the same points. So it doesn't really matter, to be honest with you. You're going to get a point if it meets any of those. You get to choose all that apply, okay? So they're all 1 point, and you get to choose, see it gets all green or red when I do that. How many of those your project applies to. So the more they apply, the more points, of course. David?
Just stepping back to the previous.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Can you tell me what the difference is, what the distinction is between public waterway access, green space, and linkage to a blue trail?
Yes. It might be like you're going to have a park or a piece of green space that the public can go on and have access to water. The linkage to a blue trail might just be a place like it has, you're going to do a kayak launch or a trailhead for a blue, maybe not a lot of land involved. It's specifically for a blue trail spot. And it might be that you're going to have access to water that's not on a blue trail. Not all the waterways are on the blue trails. Does that make sense?
Where's the blue trail?
That's a good. I was afraid that question was going to come up. I need to ask the PRC. They're linking that up, and we probably need to put that out there because I'm not exactly sure myself. But of course, I think the Intercoastal Waterway. Am I right about that? Any other, y'all have any other input to that? But
Is there any reason why you would choose to get 2 points instead of 4 points if you were? It's just because the amount of land involved is what,
as opposed to those first two, why they were different?
well, just, yeah.
I think it was mainly because the importance, the desire of the public. People really want, they desire using the water more for fishing, crabbing, and including kayaking, canoeing, but it's all those elements that's included in the first one. It's just the kayaking, canoeing included in the second one, really. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. All right, so let's see. So that's the Greenbelt components we talked about. And again, you get to explain. Each one of these has a place for you to talk about your program. And then addresses public access and use. It has full public access. That means it's going to be an open park. That doesn't mean it has to be open 24/7, of course, but it's open, regular usage for the public to enjoy. It has partial access, and we kind of came up with these because there are these distinctions, believe it or not. Basically, the land manager restricts the days or hours of week, and I'm going to use Roxbury Park, if you all are familiar with that. The town of Meggett bought property off of 174 at the Tugadoo Creek to buy Roxbury Park. That park is open to the public, but only on the weekends. They don't have it open during the week, so that's where that would fall. That land manager, the town decided when that park would be open, okay? So it's not full access, but it does have partial. Then you have limited access. This is the landowner invitation, is the limited access is by landowner invitation only, and it has to happen at least annually. I think where this will apply the most is our conservation easements. You know that there is a concern, especially on council, about using public money to protect private land that the public never gets to enjoy or to put their feet on, I should say. So a lot of our easements, they already do that. They open up their lands for bird walks, nature walks, whatever, lots of kinds of different activities. I think the ones on Edisto Island, they have their young naturalists class that go out to all these properties on Edisto. So this would be where that would fall in. So you've got a conservation easement, but we're showing that there is some public access involved with that. And to be able to claim that, though, it has to be open at least once a year. You can't say, oh, the landowner's going to let them come out next week, and then that's it, and that never happens again. That doesn't qualify. It's at least once a year this land's going to be open for the public to go out and do some type of an activity on. Okay? And then there may be some that has no public access whatsoever.
Can the activity that pay for, or does it have to be free?
No, it doesn't have to be free. No, because you may have some ball fields. Well, just like the PRC, they charge for access to their property. But if you have ball fields, you may have to pay to play on the teams, that kind of thing. So yeah, no, the money's not involved. It's really the public's ability to access it. Yeah. Okay. And then again, places to describe all that information. And then if it protects wildlife habitat, and you get to choose one, whether it protects an endangered or threatened species or wildlife habitat of any kind, and it has no wildlife habitat protection. And again, chance to explain that. If it protects low-country natural resources and natural infrastructure, you get to choose all that apply. And we've got the upland forest, freshwater, forested wetlands, saltwater marsh, marsh or marsh islands, riparian zones, floodplains, land critical to clean water, significant or grand trees. And I would imagine your project's going to fall at least in one or two of these categories, and there's definitions under each of those, and you get to choose as many as apply. And then again, you get to explain more about that. Then the historical and cultural features. This project or the land has cultural significance, or it contains structures or remains of structures or earthworks, artifacts, etc. of historical significance. It has documented historical event occurrence. It has oral tradition of historical occurrence or no historical or cultural significance. And then again, you get to tell us about that. Y'all stop me now if I'm going too fast. Threat of loss. This project would protect land that's under threat of loss. And you all know what that means. It could be easily developed, possibly it's right now being looked at for development. Or it might have already been approved for development or something like that. So it's under current threat of loss. And then it says proposes unique opportunity not likely to present itself again. Give you an example of that. One thing I can think of is like the Forest Service. They get allocations each year of funding. If they don't use it this year, they may not get it next year. They may not get that money. So if they don't use that money this year to protect this piece of land, it's likely that that opportunity will not come down the road again because that money won't be there. So that's a unique type of opportunity that, again, may not happen. And then there may be no threat of loss. Okay? It's consistent with the adopted plans. Of course, the Greenbelt Plan, we want it to be consistent with that. County or municipal plans, the regional bike ped plans, or other plans that you may know of, and you can explain, again, all of that down there. Is it ready for acquisition? If you know that the acquisition will take place within 6 months after approval, and that's approval, not application. So, you got a little bit of time in there. So once it's approved, so like from May, if it'll happen within 6 months, you can check that. If you think it's going to take longer, then it's 2 points. And then you get a reason or blocks to tell us about that information or why that's happening. Okay. Is it ready for public use? A lot of the properties we know are being purchased for future parks down the road. It takes a lot of capital and time to raise the funds to develop these lands into parks, but we need to know that. So if it's going to be open within a year, it's 3 points. If it's between 1 to 5 years, 2 points. More than 5 years, 1 point. And then if that doesn't apply, if it's not a park project, of course, it wouldn't apply to you. Okay. Yes?
If you're wrong about your estimate of when it will be completed, what happens?
You got to give us the money back. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I think that's a good question, David, because I think what we're probably going to wind up doing, and I don't know this for sure, I'm afraid to say, because it's kind of a legal conversation I need to have. Well, yes, it is. If right now there's not, unless council specifically, when they approved projects, put a timeline in there, there are not timelines in the grant agreement, the contract that we execute with you. So I really don't have anything to hold you on, per se, unless council puts it in there. I think what's probably going to happen is the Greenbelt Advisory Board is probably going to recommend deadlines. You know what I'm saying? They may not, I don't know. But if they do and council approves it, then we've got a contractual relationship. And if that's not met, then we'll have to deal with it that way. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, any other questions? Okay, let's see, moving on. And then the funding and leveraging. I'm going to tell you, I hate to admit this, but I've already found a flaw in our thinking, and I wish Taylor was here. And I really don't know how to deal with it. And I'll tell you why. Over 100% match. The GAB wanted that, and I knew what they meant at the time, but it didn't dawn on me what that meant practically. 100% match, over 100% basically is saying, okay, if you're going to ask for $100,000 in Greenbelt money, they probably meant that you're going to give us more, you're going to put more than $100,000 in match. That's more than 100%. That's not really how match works. It's the total project, and of the total project, how much percentage of that project is the match. Well, it would never be over 100% because that total's in the total 100% of the project. So that's going to be an issue. So I'm just going to let y'all know now. It's too late to go back and change it now. The application's out there, but I'll let you know. We'll deal with it. Y'all, honestly, figure up your match percentages, put them on there, give us an explanation, and I promise we'll deal with it, just so you won't be too concerned about it, okay? Does that make sense to everybody? That's how I always have computed match. If the total project value was $100,000, and you ask for $50,000 from the Greenbelt and you had $50,000 in match, it was a 50% match. 50% of the project was match. But I don't think that's what I think they were looking for providing more money than, but anyway, we'll deal with that. So just so you know. But as you can see, there's some big points on this one. I want to point that out more than anything. Big honking points with this. So if you can get some match, get it, whatever it is. So, okay. Project management, whether you've got staff dedicated to the land management, the maintenance, and the deed restriction enforcement of the property, you have financial resources for that land management. We want to make sure that that's the case. And then you've got staff experienced in that financial management. You all know what's involved in managing land. It's not cheap, it's not easy, it is detailed and can be costly. So we want to make sure that you know what you're getting into, because you hate for someone to have this wonderful property, get the land, you're like, oh, now we can't do anything with it because it's costing us all this money. So we want to help people understand what all is involved in that continued maintenance of the property, okay? Okay, and there's a lot of questions after that explaining your answers. And partnership and coordination. One of the things I love about this criteria, as opposed to the criteria we used in the past, this one, as you've seen, is more, in my opinion, much more objective, because you've got some really yes or no kind of detailed questions. Just to give you an example, one of the questions on the old criteria was, what is the size and location of the property? Okay, and it was 5 points. Well, what was 5 points? What earned 5 points on that question? What earned 1 point? I didn't know, So this is more specific. It's more objective, which I love. However, you cannot take all the subjectivity out of it. You all know that. This is probably the most objective question, if you will, on the actual application. And it's talking about your partnership and coordination, because it has a point range. For one thing, there's not designated points. If you got one partner, 1 point, two partners, it's not that way. Because every transaction is different, every property is different. So this one is a point range, but you see it goes all the way up to 10 points. And the reason the GAB did that is they want partnerships. They want to try to leverage the Greenbelt money as much as possible. Try to make our money go farther. So they want to see those partnerships out there. So you got a whole, it's just telling us, and they're going to look at it and assign it a score from 0 to 10. So that's really the most subjective question, but it's a big one. Okay? Then return on investment. Whoa, Nellie, come back here. Return on investment. This is a brand new question that wasn't on the old criteria. And this has been kind of something that council has often asked. How are we getting a return on our investment into the program? First of all, does it provide recreation and tourism income? If it's a park people are coming to, or they're using their kayaks, or they're hunting on it, all those things require license or outfitting and all that. That gets us income. So check that off, and you can choose all that apply. It provides economic benefit. It provides timbering, or it has farmland. Those involve jobs and jobs down the line. Those are some of the largest, if not the largest, economic steam engines in our state is timbering and farmland. So if it does that, it helps the economy. Provides public health benefit. People get out there and walk, or get on their bikes, or get out in the water, or whatever. Public health benefits. Provides clean water. That's other public health benefit. And then also, this is, as you can imagine, with all the flooding and all the discussions of flooding that we have had over the last several years, this has been added as well in trying to look at that. And that's provides public services such as resiliency, natural infrastructure, and resistance to flooding. Does it help bounce the property back from flooding? Is it resilient? Is it helping that resiliency? Is it helping our natural infrastructure that we have instead of tearing it down and doing the damage that causes? And then, of course, is it helping either that land or nearby land, help it to be resistant to flooding? Okay? Provides ecological services, and you see all of them there: clean air and water. I'm not going to read all that to you, but all of the definitions there, if it does that. And then there's others, such as another benefit is it stays on the tax rolls. That's an income generating program or project, because it keeps on the tax rolls. We get tax money, we can provide services. That's what the county does. Most of the properties that are bought in fee, because they're bought by a municipality or by a nonprofit, they come right off the tax rolls. They're not generating any more income or property tax. The conservation easements, of course, they stay on the tax rolls and they continue to generate taxable property income. Okay? All right, and then there's, of course, definition or description. Levels of public support. Again, support letters, if you get emails, oftentimes I get them. And I'll show you this when we get to the attachments, and I promise we're going to get there. I'm sorry, I'm talking so much. But I have a sample letter out there for you to use, I believe, for the letter to the adjacent landowners. If you remember, you have to send within 5 days of submitting your application. That can be 5 days before, 5 days after. It just has to be within 5 days within submitting your application. You have to send out letters to the adjacent landowners, adjacent to the subject property, and within 300 feet, notifying them that you're planning on submitting an application, asking for Greenbelt money to do whatever, X on the property. I've got a sample letter in there that says, if you would like to show your support for this project, send a letter or email or whatever, put your contact information. So right there is a quick way to try to get some support letters, okay? So I would recommend doing that. So if you have those, you're going to have a place, or see them in the attachments in a minute, attach those to your application. Results of a public hearing. Lots of the municipalities, because you need your council's approval or commission's approval to submit the application, lots of times you all have a public hearing. And if you do, that's fine. If you do that, submit that information. We'd like to see it, okay? And then if there's any other type of public support that you have. And this is not partnership letters now, okay? They might support it, and that's fine, but it's not the partnership letters per se. It's supporting. This is really public support, okay? And then option of none, of course. And that is, believe it or not, that is the criteria. That's all the ones that you get points on. We did, again, trying to catch all the uniqueness of every property is difficult when you have, all these questions. So we have put an additional question in there for you to fill out. If you don't, that's fine. It doesn't get you a score. Hopefully, and you might want to look, you might want to look at that, because if there's something there that you didn't catch in your criteria, you want to go back and catch it. But if there's any other thing you want to tell us about the project, this is the place to do it. It doesn't have a score associated with it. It's just a chance for you to give us even more information about your project. Okay? So that's all the criteria. Now, the attachments. Okay, go away. So go to the attachments, and these are required. Most of them are required. Area map, and you see this little information thing? It's going to take you to the county's GIS thing. So you can quickly look up a map right like that if you want to, and print it out as a PDF. So hopefully that'll be helpful. Now am I going to lose my application? Okay, so if you want to attach the file, there you go, and you just attach it. It'll upload it. They all have to be in PDF format, okay, except for your photos. They're JPEG. Plat, again, information. It's going to take you to the county's deed or RMC. Oh, it's not RMC office anymore. Records of deed. What's it called now?
Register of Deeds.
Thank you. Register of Deeds. I should know that. I'm so used to calling it RMC. Register of Deeds office to look up plats, deeds, whatever. Okay, and then attach the file. Photos, JPEG. You can attach. I think there's a limit, 20. I think or I don't remember, but I think you can attach a bunch of pictures to it. The landowner letter. If you click right here, what'd I do? Oh, there it is. I'm sorry, it downloaded it. Did you see it download down there? Sorry. There's a sample letter in Word, so you don't even have to copy and paste. You can just load it up and put in your information. And this is required. It has to contain this language. By ordinance, this is the letter you're going to send to the landowner you're working with. You've got to send this to them. Once you send that, sign it, PDF it, scan it in, put a PDF with it. But here's a sample letter for you to use. Okay? All right. And then the adjacent landowner letter, again, I downloaded it. There's the adjacent letter. And again, it says, letter to adjacent landowners and those within 300 feet of the property. Again, it's a Word document. All you got to do is pull it up. If you want to change the language, that's fine, but it's a sample for you to use. And again, I've got here, if you'd like to offer support for this, please submit, let whoever know the support. You can put your contact information there. Now, for this, what I need, I don't need if you're going to, let's say you've got 100 adjacent landowners and within 300 feet of the property. I don't need 100 letters, y'all. All I need is a copy of one letter and then the list of who you sent it to. So really, hopefully just 2 pages. So don't try to PDF in stack O letters, you know what I'm saying? I'll trust that you sent that letter to those people. I just need to know, I need to see the names of the people you sent it to. And just while we're talking about that, let me go back. Where's my application? Back here where we were on the area map, I don't know if y'all know this. I want to show you in case you're not aware. This is the county's GIS parcel finder page on the county website. Okay, so to look something up, I don't know how familiar you all are with this page, but you can look something up by the address, by the street, by the person's name, the landowner. Is that right? Yeah, address, but this is street name too. And then parcel ID, that's the one I use the most. It's just easier. Their TMS number. And then I don't know parcel owner. There we go. Okay, so let me see if I can look at mine up just to show you. Because there ain't a whole lot of roofs in the area. Oh, there I am, Kathy L. Boop. Okay, so there's my little house. So you say, okay, I can tell who's adjacent. Here's the TMS people that are adjacent. So you're like, well, I don't know my neighbors. I don't know who these people are. If you hit this little identify button and then click on that parcel, it'll tell you who the owner is and what their mailing address is, 7979 Shadow Oak. Actually, you probably want to look down to their mailing address because a lot of people, they don't live here. They own the land but live somewhere else. So if you look down to their mailing address, that's how you find out that information, okay, if that'll help you. Now you say, okay, well, I got the adjacent, but this person over here I wonder if they're within 300 feet. Well, if you go up here to the ruler, you can measure by a line, drawing a line, okay? So you click on the single line, hello, and then if you, okay, here we go. I'm just going to draw a line and let it go. It tells you 4394 feet. So what you're going to do is just draw out a line like that. That's 128. You want to go out to 300 feet. That'll help you identify what houses or what properties are within 300 feet of your property. So if y'all are having a hard time doing that, that's an easy way. And I'll be glad to help you with that if you need me to. So, but it's there on the county website, and it'll take you right to it if you need that. Okie dokie. Okay, so that was the support letters. The municipal endorsement. Now, let me rephrase this. A lot of these attachments are required. So like this, and you'll see this when I move off of it, like the municipal endorsement, that is not a required attachment because all of y'all are not going to have that. Remember, this is the one where someone asked if they could apply, if an entity could apply to use money within an urban municipality. And I said they could, but they'd have to get the municipality's endorsement. That's where this goes. So not every project's going to have this. So it's not a required attachment, but most of these are. And so if you don't put an attachment, you can't submit your application, just so you know it won't be complete. Landowner disclosure. Master plan. That's another one too. Not all of y'all are going to have a master plan. Either isn't going to be ready or that doesn't apply. It's not going to be a park or something that's going to have a master plan. So again, that's not a required attachment, but if you have one, that'd be great. And I think if you hit these buttons, well, it just says, if applicable, yeah. Okay, landowner disclosure. If y'all remember, there was a page, There was a page in the application that the landowner themselves had to fill out and sign with this is that page. We didn't make it a Word document because I want you to print it out, have the landowner fill it out, sign it, and then you PDF it to me or attach the PDF to your application. It's the exact same document, okay? So that's it right there. You just print it out, have the landowner what we have taken away is the notary. I used to require you to get it notarized. I'm not doing that anymore. So I think it was a burdensome. Okay, let's see, Greenbelt application. And that, y'all, believe it or not, is that. So when you get to the end, of course, all them things are red because I hadn't finished one thing. okay? So if I tried to submit this right now, hopefully it'd go, you know what I'm not seeing, Peggy, is my information over on the right. I don't know if it's because I'm on this. I got to see about that. I think, and I don't know if it's because I'm in whatever I'm in, but there's supposed to be over here some information. Need to check into it. It's got my contact information if you have any questions as you're going through. And it also reminds you, don't hit submit unless you're, kind of that thing. But okay, so authorized agent. You see here, you're going to sign it with your mouse or your finger if it's a tablet. You can do this on your phone. This application's available on your phone, on your tablet, everything. You type their name, title. You can clear the signature. And then a witness, of course. And then they sign it as well. And then once you're ready, you hit submit. Now, it's not going to let me. It says application incomplete. Ain't going to happen. But once you submit it, what it's going to do, it's going to give you, I believe, the option to print it out and save it as a PDF. So you are going to print that out. And when I mean that, I think it's everything. Well, no, just the application because you have the attachments in PDF. What we see on our end is really cool. They've made us a management page, and it's going to have your project application, a link to your project application. We go to that link, it's going to show us your application document, and all of your attachments are right there with your photos and everything. And that's what the board's going to see as well. So it's very cool. So hopefully it's much more streamlined, not killing trees. It'll be less expensive to do all this stuff for everybody. So, and hopefully more user-friendly. Catherine?
The hard copies that we have to turn in
Mm-hmm.
to, so we would just individually go and print all those attachments.
Yeah. Yeah, since you're going to have to scan in the PDFs, you're going to have them printed out probably anyway for the attachments. Just print out your application and put it on the front and bring it to me. 2 copies, please. Again, that's one for the files and then one for the deed. Just keep me from having to make a bunch of copies of stuff.
Is there a file size limit on the photos?
I don't think so. I don't think right now there's not, Matt, but I was told by our IT staff if we start blowing it up, there could be. So just beware. But I think right now they feel like we're okay. Because probably one of the biggest documents, and I guess I need to say that, if you remember back, if you go to the market value section, come on, baby. There we go. Where it said, yes, you're going to submit an appraisal, and that's where you submit it. Some of those appraisals can be really big. There's not a limit here either. You should be able to load it all. However, if you run into a problem, the first few pages of the appraisal is usually the summary, and it gives the value and all that. If you want to just scan those in, that's okay too. I will need eventually a full version, so you're going to have to get it to me anyway. This would probably be an easier way to get it to me because sometimes when you email stuff to me, if it's too big, it won't email. You know what I mean? So if you can, and that's why hopefully your appraisal will give you an electronic version of it. That'd be the best thing for you all. So you want to scan in that big honking document. But this was the biggest one we were worried about because, appraisals can be rather large. But it's my understanding there's no file size limitation. Is that right, Peggy? Yeah. A lot of stuff. But that's what we're here for. So when y'all, and this is the first time we're doing this, we have Peggy and I have put several applications in, testing it and retesting it. And, as you saw, I've already found one thing that's probably got to be fixed, but we're going to find other stuff. If you run into any problems, please let us know because we want it to work and we're going to make it work. So, or if you got some suggestions to make it better, what the Greenbelt Advisory Board is doing is going to be looking at this through this period of how to make everything, we can improve upon. It's just a whole new day for us all. So I'm sure there's things that we can improve upon and do better. So just let us know. And that's everything I have, unless you all have more questions or need any more information. Okay. Well, thanks so much for coming. I really do appreciate it. I'm really excited about new projects. We've been waiting for this day, so I'm really excited. Again, you don't have to wait till February to submit your application if you want to submit it early, but just know once you hit the submit button, your ability to change it's done. So, but if y'all want to come and meet with us, you're more than welcome to do that. We'd love to do that. If you want to get on the phone, work through it together on the phone, I can do that as well. So whatever you need, just let me know.